We take stacks of fascinating sources and, well, we cut through the noise to find the really compelling stuff for you. Today, we're diving deep into Sir Isaac Newton. Not just, the discoveries, gravity, calculus, all that. We want to get into who he actually was, what world shaped him,
Yeah.
and what complexities were lurking beneath that iconic image. Our mission, really, is to understand this figure who's maybe one of history's most misunderstood geniuses. Okay, so picture this. It's 1666. England's in the grip of the plague.
Right. A terrible time.
Universities are shut. This young student, Newton, he retreats to his family's place in the countryside. And it's there, during this forced isolation, the story goes he sees an apple fall. And that sparks this incredible chain of thought, though it takes nearly 20 years to fully bloom into, well, redefining the universe.
Yeah, and the striking thing there is how that moment, born out of a crisis, really, became this catalyst, this retreat, this isolation. It just created this unprecedented focus for him, his annus mirabilis, right, the miracle years. It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? Sometimes those big leaps forward, they start when things are quiet.
That's a great way to put it, because this greatest scientist label, it hides some really humble, even difficult beginnings. He was born on Christmas Day, 1642, Woolsthorpe. Apparently so small and sickly, his mother literally thought he wouldn't make it.
Yeah, I've read that too. A very precarious start.
And his father had already died. Then his mother remarries and leaves young Isaac with his grandparents.
Which, by most accounts, wasn't a warm relationship at all.
Exactly. And historians often point to this early abandonment as key to understanding his later personality, that famous aloofness.
Absolutely. If you connect those dots, those early experiences, they really seem to foreshadow that that distance he kept from people later on. It's like a link almost between that personal struggle and this intense drive for intellectual work. Like his mind was his safe space.
Right. But he wasn't totally alone in his thinking, was he? He's born right into the scientific revolution.
Oh, absolutely. It's buzzing.
You've got Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler laying the groundwork for a century. And England itself is becoming this hub.
The Royal Society gets founded just around then, 1660.
A place for these natural philosophers to actually swap ideas. And you see it in his education too, right? Grantham Grammar School.
Mr. Stokes, yeah, fostering that mathematical talent.
And then Cambridge as a subcisor,
Yeah.
basically working his way through.
Which, again, points to that isolation. He wasn't part of the privileged social circles.
Right.
And that seems to have just pushed him deeper into his studies. He wasn't sticking to the syllabus. He was reading Galileo, Descartes. The cutting-edge stuff, it really captivated him. So it begs the question, doesn't it? How much did that tough start, plus this incredibly exciting intellectual time, how much did that fuel him?
Yeah, you wonder if that sort of external isolation just made his internal world even more intense, gave him the space to think differently. And it absolutely sets the stage for those miracle years. That plague exile, 1665 to 66, one guy.
One guy, yeah.
Making breakthroughs in math, physics, and optics.
It's incredible. And, it's important to say these ideas weren't completely out of the blue. He'd been taking notes, working hard at Cambridge already.
Right, he had foundations.
Exactly. But
Right.
that uninterrupted time, it was like an explosion, a focused explosion of ideas, all driven by being completely alone with his thoughts.
So let's take math. 1665, he develops the binomial theorem. Foundational stuff for calculus later on.
Crucial, yeah.
But then, and this is the bit I find amazing, he writes it down, this complex work, puts the paper in a drawer, and basically forgets about it for months. Doesn't publish it for over 20 years. What does that even tell us?
Well, it feels like a real Newton paradox, doesn't it? Here's this genius, totally driven by the discovery and not necessarily by, telling everyone immediately.
Or getting credit.
Or getting credit, exactly. It seems like genuine knowledge for knowledge's sake. And it also just shows how far ahead he was. Nobody else in Europe was doing math that complex then.
And while that's sitting in a drawer, his mind is already on to, arguably, the bigger prize. Gravity. Building on Galileo, Descartes, but figuring out the math behind it. That force between objects proportional to mass, inverse square the distance.
And the third law, equal and opposite reaction.
Right, the apple story. Probably, likely, a bit of a myth, or at least embellished.
Probably.
But it perfectly captures that aha moment, right? That insight into why everything falls down towards the Earth's center.
It's the perfect symbol for it.
And at the same time...
That's doing optics.
Yes. Groundbreaking experiments. Not just thinking, but doing. showing white light isn't one thing.
Right, it's heterogeneous, made of different corpuscles, he called them.
Which centuries later, Einstein connects to photons. But imagine him. Dark room, tiny beam of light, prism,
Projecting it onto a wall 20 feet away.
and seeing that spectrum, realizing light separates. It's made of different parts. Just, wow.
The sheer intellectual agility in that period, it's almost hard to grasp. Math, physics, optics, all at once, and mostly self-taught beyond the basics. It's like his mind was just operating on a completely different level of synthesis.
Okay, so we've got the science, which is mind-blowing. But this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. The man himself.
Ah, yes. The personality.
Deeply reclusive. Very little interest in socializing. Forget marriage or family. Historians even describe him as largely asexual, which was pretty unusual then.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it, how that intense self-containment, that social distance, how that might actually feed into such profound intellectual focus for certain people.
If all that energy just went inwards, into the work.
Perhaps channeling everything into understanding the cosmos, maybe, instead of the messiness of human relationships.
But he wasn't afraid of conflict in the intellectual world. He had that big debate with Huygens about light.
Waves versus particles, right, a major scientific disagreement.
And then the really nasty one with Robert Hooke, fellow Englishman, Royal Society member. That lasted for decades.
Oh, Hooke and Newton, that was bitter.
There's even that rumor, probably just a rumor, but still, that Newton had all of Hooke's portraits destroyed after he died.
Well, it certainly speaks to the atmosphere. The 17th century scientific world wasn't always polite and collegial.
Not at all.
It was fiercely competitive. Priority, reputation. These were huge deals. These weren't just academic points. They felt personal, fought by some very sharp and sometimes prickly minds.
Okay, but maybe the most surprising thing, reading through the sources, is his other passion. His lifelong, really intense interest in alchemy and hermeticism.
Ah, yes, alchemy.
Because this wasn't just like a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
He probably spent more time on this than on physics, trying to turn lead into gold, ancient mystical knowledge. What's going on there?
Well, it's crucial not to see this as just some weird quirk. Newton's alchemy. It gives us a window into how science worked back then. It was more holistic, more experimental in a different way, and often, yeah, deeply mystical.
So it wasn't totally separate from his proper science.
Not entirely. Many big names dabbled: Copernicus, Robert Boyle. Chemistry actually grew out of alchemy, and Hermeticism, this sort of blend of philosophy, magic, ancient wisdom. It was tangled up with the scientific revolution, too. It wasn't a clean break back then.
And he was serious about it. Had his own lab at Cambridge, collecting weird substances, equipment, hunting for the Philosopher's Stone.
Thousands of pages of notes, apparently, often in code or symbols.
Yeah, underscores just how deep he went. And it wasn't just alchemy, it was esoteric history, theology, Atlantis, Old Testament prophecies.
He even tried to calculate the end of the world. Came up with 2034 or 2060, I think.
Wild. Okay, so despite all this esoteric moonlighting, as you might call it,
yes.
he does eventually pull his revolutionary physics and math together into maybe the single most important science book ever, the Principia Mathematica.
Philosophia Naturalis Principia Mathematica, the mathematical principles of natural philosophy. Finished 86, published 87.
And this book was just transformative.
Monumental synthesis is the right word. It didn't just describe how planets moved, like Kepler and Galileo had observed. It gave the why, the mathematical laws.
Gravity, mechanics, his view of the heliocentric system, it just blew European science wide open.
Absolutely. A huge leap in understanding.
But here's another fascinating wrinkle. He wasn't totally alone, was he? At the exact same time, over in Germany.
Leibniz. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz.
Independently discovering a lot of the same stuff, especially calculus.
Yes, the calculus controversy. Who got there first?
It got incredibly bitter. Newton basically accused Leibniz of stealing his ideas, using letters as evidence. How does that simultaneous discovery and the fight afterwards change how we see Newton's singular genius?
That's a really important point. It kind of forces us to think about how discovery happens. It suggests that, science has to reach a certain point, a certain body of knowledge has to exist.
Right.
For individuals, even working totally separately to make similar breakthroughs. We saw it again later with Darwin and Wallace on evolution, didn't we?
Yeah, that's true.
It reminds you that even the greatest minds are, well, standing on the shoulders of giants, as Newton himself famously said, and they're swimming in the same intellectual currents of their time.
So later in life, Newton becomes this establishment figure, master of the Royal Mint.
A huge job. overseeing this massive recoinage, replacing millions in clipped coins in just a couple of years, way faster than usual.
He gets knighted too, Sir Isaac Newton. First scientist in Europe to get that kind of title, apparently.
And president of the Royal Society for, what, 24 years?
Yeah, long time. But even then, that difficult personality didn't just vanish. He famously clashed with John Flamsteed, the royal astronomer.
Tried to suppress Flamsteed's data, yeah. Didn't want it published before he could use it in his own revised Principia. Still competitive. Still prickly.
So ultimately, like Einstein maybe, Newton's work is still being looked at, reevaluated. Modern physics, black holes, quantum stuff shows where his laws have limits, especially off Earth.
Sure, but that's how science progresses, isn't it?
Exactly. It doesn't diminish the achievement. It was this absolutely critical step. Stephen Hawking called the Principia the most important book ever written on the hard sciences. Can't argue much with that.
No, it laid the foundation for centuries of physics.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening? Isaac Newton. Clearly a mind unlike almost any other, driven by maybe a difficult childhood, shaped by this incredible revolutionary time in science, and committed his whole life to this pursuit of knowledge that fascinatingly mixed groundbreaking physics with really arcane alchemy. He was complicated, he was brilliant. His impact is just undeniable.
Yeah, this deep dive really shows how personal stuff, the individual's life, converges with these big intellectual waves of an era, how legacies get made. And it forces you to see even the most brilliant people within their time, sometimes operating in ways that seem really contradictory to us now, blending science and, well, the esoteric.
Okay, so here's a thought to leave you chewing on. Thinking about Leibniz discovering calculus independently, and Newton's deep, serious engagement with alchemy and all that esoteric stuff. How does that shift how you perceive his genius? Does it make him seem more human, maybe more a product of his specific time? Or does it challenge that standard picture of the lone, purely rational scientist? Something to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you feel a bit more informed and maybe quite a bit more curious about the truly remarkable and definitely multifaceted Isaac Newton.